Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World of Brickfilms podcast. I am your host, William of AW Studios. Joining with us, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Sean Willis of Cinebrick.
Hello again.
And our special guest today is Joshua Chawner of Hamster Productions.
Hello. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know this one is a long time coming because we've been actually talking about having you on for, I guess, years at this point.
Probably about since the beginning. You know, we've had plenty of people in mind.
Oh, that's very that's great to hear, because I've seen actually already you've had some pretty big like stop motion Lego stop motion names on the podcast. So I'm very happy that you thought of me, and I'm very happy to add my name to that list as well.
Yeah. Actually, we've been very lucky, I suppose, with the caliber of guests. You know, I feel like at the beginning we weren't exactly planning for it to be just like A-listers the whole way through, pretty much, but it just kind of panned out that way.
Yeah. I've listened to a few episodes actually, and
Nice.
I enjoyed the episode with Forest Whaley, and also I really enjoyed the episode with I hope I'm saying his name right, Maxime Marion, from Studios Epsilon, because I love his series Henry and Edmund, so it was great to hear that podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Maxime's definitely a highlight. I mean, well, I think after every podcast we say it's a highlight, but certainly Maxime was great to talk to. He was great at, you know, elaborating on everything.
Yeah, I think this what you guys are doing is great. Yeah, I'm glad to contribute to this list.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, it's mad because like I remember, I think literally your bank robbery film, the London bank robbery one.
Yep.
That was literally like one of the very first Brick films I must have seen. I think at least one of the first ones where like really left like an impact on me.
Okay.
And I remember just like, oh god, I was just like the scale of it and everything. I just found it so amazing, and like a huge inspiration to me. That was from like pretty much from the beginning.
That's that's really kind, Will. Thanks. Like a lot of work went into that film. It was actually the last film I made before I moved on to using Dragon Frame. So it's sort of the last classic Hamster production, I like to think, where when I was recording that, I mean, I could see the frame of the image, but I was just shooting the animation blindly. I had no real idea what it looked like. Mm-hmm. I just sort of had to imagine how the movement would come together in post-production as I was filming. You know, maybe I'd flick back and forth between the images with the arrow keys to sort of get an idea. And I also, for that film, I had a huge amount of help from my brother, Jacob, in making the set. So you mentioned the kind of expansive set. We just threw everything we had at it, like all the modular buildings we owned. We had like wood that was just in the attic where I was recording at the time, like holding things up. So that's how we recreated like roads going uphill or whatever, and like the bank of the river. So yeah, that was really fun. It was really fun trying to recreate like a real place as well. You know, we had like Trafalgar Square in there, and it was actually also the first film I made where I set it at a particular time. So I chose to set it in the 50s. I can't quite remember the logic there, but I just thought it'd be fun to do that. So.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing a comment, someone posting like, well, actually, the flashing lights, you know, direction. What are they called?
The indicator.
Yeah, the indicator. Oh yeah, actually, indicator they weren't started being used until after 1957 or whatever it was.
That's the danger, you know, that's the territory I'm putting myself in when I choose to set it in a particular era. I think like I think my research for that film was at a very basic level. I remember Googling whether traffic lights existed, and I'm pretty sure they did, but I can't quite remember. The thing is, with things like that, you know, if the indicator or like whatever it is that you're including sort of adds visually, I think that's probably for a production like that, that's the priority over.
I agree. Yeah,
perfect accuracy. But yeah, it's funny when you get comments like that.
But then, I mean, like, he didn't, like, the analysis column didn't sort of, like, a piece didn't break off, in the 1950s either, but,
Yeah, that is true. That is true. In fact, I should point out now that the entire plot was fiction. I should let everyone know. Yeah, so that's a good point. Yeah, I just like the idea of making it have a bit of an old school feel, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Plus, of course, and this is a very minor spoiler for those who have yet to watch the film, but the coin that appears at the end that's in the box, which is the focus of the film, it's like this 2 shilling coin that my dad had, and that said like 1957 on it. So in my mind, this coin is being delivered to the bank in 1957 as a new delivery from the Royal Mint or whatever, and that kind of chose the.
And of course, the cinema says showing the bridge on the River Kwai, which is from 1957.
Yeah. That was kind of funny because basically I chosen the date based on the coin. And then I was just like, okay, what can I just include in these like scenes to make it feel like 1957? So yeah, like I just Googled like films that came out in 1957, and that was like just so happened to be a film that came out that year. And so it's like, right, plaster that on the Lego Cinema. And like all these random adverts I've got in like the tube station, I just quickly drew them on a piece of paper, just researching anything that existed in 1957. So that was an interesting creative decision.
But yeah, certainly when you're talking about the shooting blind, where you have no playback and just flipping between the images, the arrow keys. Yeah, that's how I did it for far too long. But
yeah,
but
yeah,
I wanted to say, yeah, like what stands out to me the most about your work is not just how expansive the sets are, but how expansive the scenarios are. Like, it's not just people talking in a big set. Like, there's so much movement, and it goes from set to set to set to set. Like, the events are massive. All the vehicle chases, and it just keeps moving and moving. And they're like 10-minute videos, so like it's incredible how much work must go into all of these.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. I do appreciate that because I think action and like you say, sort of, well, like I suppose it's fairly obvious for stop motion. The more stuff that's moving, the more time consuming it is to film. And I sort of gained this philosophy of not shying away from expensive, like you say, expensive scenes. So expensive in terms of time or whatever. Because, well, first of all, I love action sequences. I think action sequences are one of the most challenging things, certainly in modern cinema, to achieve well, and quite often they're not achieved well. And I think in the Lego stop motion community, action is definitely like something that's fun to do. So, like for me, making an animation, it's all about, is this something that I will absolutely enjoy making? And if the answer is yes, it usually means it's some like elaborate action sequence.
Yeah.
I think as well, like part of the reason I sort of went down that route, as opposed to like more dialogue-based films or less movement, is because I would make a video every summer holiday between my education. So when I was at college, when I started when I was in high school, but then as the projects got more elaborate, it was sort of, I could only do it during my summer holidays when I was at college, and then later when I was at university. And so every year, after like a year of sort of studying and academic work, I'd come home for the summer with this sort of great like creative energy, just sort of ready to like make whatever crazy idea I'd come up with that year. And so I think it was that energy that like sort of allowed me to like not hold back on like time consuming action sequences.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your comments. Yeah, it's very kind.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how, like, if I was to look back at my own older Brick films, that are mostly dialogue and There's not a lot of camera movement. There's no focus on like sets. Like usually it's just one set. I'd be looking at them now thinking, oh, the animation isn't very good because I wasn't using drag and frame, and the timing isn't very good because I wasn't using drag and frame, like the timing of the animation to the dialogue. But like, I can look at this and like, even if you could technically do the animation better with drag and frame now, like it still holds up as an enjoyable watch because of all the other qualities, like just the scenarios and the amount of movement.
That's really interesting you say that. Now, first of all, I'm sure your early videos hold up. In fact, I remember your Benny and Lee series.
Yeah.
That was one that I enjoyed back in the good old days of YouTube. So yeah, I definitely think your animations still hold up. But I know the point you're getting at. Something that's actually surprised me doing this is the sort of timelessness that my films have seemed to develop, particularly sort of my post 2010 films, starting with like the train chase. Yeah, I get people commenting all the time saying like, I watched this when I was a kid, and it's like I always come back to it every so often. And you're right. It's like, if I'm being honest, I definitely think these films, probably all my films actually, they're a little bit rough around the edges with the animation style. So it's like, it's definitely not the highest quality animation on YouTube in terms of the technique of the actual stop motion. But they are, like I said earlier, what I didn't hold back on was the ambition of the film and like the sets and the action. That was always like the number one priority for me. And then basically my ability as an animator would come second to that. So, or like as a filmmaker. And well, it seems that there is some benefit to having that philosophy that I have been fortunate enough to witness. And that is that people, will come back to watch the films, I guess, because of the impact that the sequence or the narrative has on people. So yeah, it's an interesting point, Sean. Yeah,
because we're always seeing people in the Brickfilm community getting hung up on smoothness.
Absolutely. And like the thing is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think it's great to like try and master your technique, but yeah, I think different people work in different ways, and I definitely was someone that, I realized there just wasn't enough like mega action sequences out there, so I was like, right, that's going to be my focus.
I think though, like with what I think really stood out for me, like watching, because especially like the London bank robbery film, like when I first saw it, was like, yeah, sure, I'd seen like brick films with like like I guess better animation or whatever, but like. I feel like with what really stood out to me with this one was just like the sheer, like you said, like, the ambition and the scale of it, and just like how it kind of just never seems like, you've had one thing that seems like really ambitious and well like set up, and then it kind of keeps going on, it keeps going and it keeps going, and like it just keeps like getting bigger. And I remember like that kind of stuff. It makes you kind of like, well, I guess sort of like laugh, and you don't really know how else to kind of think, how else to kind of react to it, but like. You find it just so like, wow, this just keeps going, and you just. I remember like I was so impressed by it. I was like, oh, I got to show my dad this, back in the day. But no, it's like it's. I think that's really kind of like the scale of it all. I think especially with that and the Great Getaway as well. Like that one is another one that was really just like.
The Great Getaway is a huge standout.
Yeah, thanks. And shout out to the Great Getaway. That's actually, well, first of all, thanks for those kind words, Will. The Great Getaway is actually, well, I think was my favourite one that I'd made. Perhaps my latest one, the Baracuda Heist, has overtaken that. I've not quite made my mind up. But yeah, the Great Getaway, although it hasn't, let's say, performed as well on YouTube, it still has a very special place in my heart, and I've had a lot of people say very positive things about that film. So going back to the first point you mentioned, that they just sort of seem to keep going. I think what's interesting with my process for making a film is I never really know how long it's going to end up. I guess that's true for stop motion in general. I think it's a medium that's actually very true to life, where when you start animating, okay, you can try and predict where things are going to go, but sometimes things can sort of take on a mind of their own as you're animating. You never quite know what that end state's going to be. So I always aim for like 10 minutes, but then that kind of developed naturally, to be honest, just from the fact that I would start a project, let's say like the London bank robbery. I'd start filming it. I'd have my storyboard, like rough storyboard laid out. And, you know, when you're halfway through a project, you can't just, you know, even if it's taking longer than you expect, you can't just give up, right? Because then you've lost your first half. So I think that's where that kind of, wow, this keeps on going, doesn't it, feeling comes from. Because I was probably experiencing that myself when I was making it. It was just like, okay, I was expecting to be done by now and I'm only halfway through, but I'm going to see it off anyway. I'm going to make sure it's done.
Yes, that has happened to me, where I suddenly realize, oh, this is going to be longer than I initially anticipated when I started making it at this scale.
Yeah, and it can be like a really it can be a really bad feeling, I suppose, depending on where you are with your other work or whatever going on in your life at that point. Sometimes you want a project to be done because you need it to be done, but like you just gotta fight through that and get it done. Yeah.
I actually did want to briefly mention as well, because you recently finished you got your PhD in physics.
Yes,
so I want to sort of quickly kind of congratulate you on that.
Thank you very much.
And because you've been pretty busy as well on with that as well. On top of all the brick filming side of things, you've a couple of years ago now you did the world's coolest Lego sets video, which is really really cool. I actually watched that. We watched it again earlier, and
Thanks.
You actually managed to freeze a Lego minifigure to like the coolest possible temperature. So yeah, really, really interesting video. Actually won a couple of awards as well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed that film. That was definitely a really interesting project for me. Yeah, and also thanks for mentioning my PhD. So basically, you know, I was kind of halfway into my PhD, and whilst I was doing my PhD, so whilst I was at university doing my undergraduate and masters, I did have the time to do brick films during my summer holiday, but my brick filming had to sort of take a step to the side as I entered my PhD because, well, a PhD, let me tell you, it's a full-time job. So my brick film was taking a step to the side, but my YouTube channel, I was trying to sort of keep it alive. I would just sort of release something now and then. And but essentially one of my colleagues at the university approached me, aware of my YouTube channel, and sort of said, you know, why don't we, you know, we're surrounded by all this amazing cooling technology. So I should say, I did my PhD at Lancaster University, and Lancaster University's physics department has one of the best centres in the world for refrigeration technology. Yeah, so essentially my colleague, Dima, approached me and said, why don't we just send a Lego figure to the coldest temperature in the universe? And we just sort of thought, yeah, let's just make a film about this and see what happens. So I should also point out that the refrigerators at Lancaster Physics Department, they go down to, I think it's like 1,000th of a degree above absolute zero. So for those of you who don't know, there is actually a minimum temperature you can reach. I think in Celsius it's like minus 273.15 thereabouts Celsius. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit. And yeah, so it's like 1,000th of a degree Celsius or Kelvin above that 0 point. And the whole thing was a runaway train though. So we put the Lego figure in the fridge, and we decided we may as well put some Lego bricks as well in and measure the thermal conductivity through them. So essentially how good of a thermal insulator they are. And it turned out, to our surprise, they are an extremely good insulator. In fact, on par, if not better than the industry standards So we were like, right, well, I guess we're going to have to write a paper on this. So I had a very bizarre set of, I think it was a few weeks I spent writing the paper. I just remember thinking, this is so weird. I'm writing a physics paper for a physics journal, which involves Lego. This is just very bizarre. Anyway, I wrote the draft and I sent it out to like my colleagues at the department. And the next day, they're all coming into the lab saying, all with comments on the paper like, this is genius, or this is ridiculous, or what is going on with this paper. Anyway, so we got it sent off to a journal. It got published. And of course, I made the film about it, and the whole thing was an incredible experience. And like you say, that the film won 2 awards. It came first place at the Bristol Science Film Festival and first place at the Vienna Science Film Festival, which sadly I couldn't go to because of COVID. But we still won anyway, so that was nice. But yeah, that's a bit of an overview of that whole project anyway.
What was really crazy as well was that your paper, you said in your like update video, it got like up to like 120,000 views, and it went viral on Reddit as well. yeah, it's kind of unheard of for an academic paper to sort of get that level, or well, it's very rare to get that level of attention. So that was just kind of very strange, because I expected the video would get, a considerable number of views, because a video is something that's kind of, it's designed to be accessible to everyone, like a YouTube video. But academic papers, unless they're on some very groundbreaking result, they usually don't get so much traffic. So to see the paper get as many reads as the video got views was kind of phenomenal, really. I was kind of blown away by the response there. And yeah, it did go viral on Reddit. I had a lot of fun reading through the Reddit comments. Yeah, a lot of very good comments, a lot of not so good comments. It was very fun anyway for me to read through them. So yeah, I mean that was probably the most amazing part of the project, to be honest, was just how many people read the paper.
But I was going to say, now that things are starting to open back up again, suddenly I'm wondering if we'll see the return of the Cinebrick Festival, because if I'm not mistaken, I think you've had some brick films place in Cinebrick before. Yes,
Cinebrick, yeah. Cinebrick is actually the only Lego animation-specific film festival I've ever submitted to. I'm hoping that may change in the future. And yeah, I had a wonderful time in just before I started my PhD. I actually went to Portugal to the first time my films were being shown there. I went to sort of see the event. Yeah, it's a wonderful event. It's run by Carlos. Shout out to Carlos. And they have like a side. There's like, it's sort of a sister event to this like Lego fan event where people bring their creations. And yeah, I've come second place there twice. So I came second place there in 2016 with the London bank robbery that we mentioned. And then the next year in 2017, I came second place with the Great Getaway. And then I stopped making brick films when I started my PhD. And then, of course, now that I've gone back into brick filming, they've been closed because of COVID. So I'm really hoping it will come back.
Yeah, now that you have a new brick film.
yeah. But maybe one day I can get first place. I don't know if it'll ever happen. Maybe I'm just going to be in second place forever. But
I've kind of been thinking that if it does come back, we might be able to get some interest in getting a whole bunch of brick filmers to actually fly out.
Do you know, Sean, that would be honestly amazing. That would be great. Because actually, well, in 2016 when I went, I was the only brick filmer, at least that I'm aware of, who was there. I did ask Carlos, and he said he said I was the only one. So I think like that idea is brilliant. It would honestly be great to like sort of generate a sort of more in-person brick filming community, I think.
Yeah.
So that should definitely happen if it comes back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that we've been talking about that more ever since we weren't able to do it. That's kind of what really has put the idea more into people's heads.
That's the funny thing. Yeah. It's one of it. I guess like before the pandemic and stuff, people's lives are so busy that they wouldn't really consider doing something like that. Whereas now maybe people are sort of, we're kind of looking to create these communities again. But yeah, I think that's a solid idea. In fact, I was going to ask, like, if there's any other brick film specific film festivals that I should be entering my stuff into, please let me know. Because I've been sort of traversing the internet to try and find any appropriate film festivals for my latest film. I did ask Carlos about Cinebrick 2022, and he said it's a sort of maybe at this point, so we can have our fingers crossed anyway.
Yeah, I sure hope so, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, we were very happy to see that when your new Brick film came out. And, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, you were talking about, like, keeping your YouTube channel alive, but, like, it had been a good few years since your last major Brick film. So, like, to see that the new film has nearly 700,000 views in a couple of months, like, I'm impressed that your channel had enough juice in it still.
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky, I think, in that respect, to be honest, because I was concerned that my channel would decline during my PhD, and actually in a lot of ways it has declined during my PhD, but something that hasn't gone away is kind of this base of like fans that I think these are people who grew up watching my older films, and you know, every time I would release a video, it doesn't matter what it was, you know, I did a sketch in 2020 and I did the update video September last year. Everyone would say, "Oh, you know, welcome back," or have all these amazing kind messages for me, and that was really touching to see that, and it made me realise that actually, you know, I hadn't lost everything with my channel, that there was still people who wanted to see more animations from me. So that definitely gave me like kind of a little bit of momentum with working on a brick film after I hadn't worked on a major one for like 4 years. Because I felt like, at least there's some people out there who are going to enjoy it. And like you mentioned, now that I have released the film, so I released it only December of last year, and it's now just the beginning of March. And yeah, the response has been really fantastic to see. I was actually very nervous when I uploaded it because I simply didn't know really what the response would be like. But I'm very pleased to say that the response has been great. And like you say, the views are coming in. So yeah, I think it's a good indication that I should probably make more. So
yeah, that's nice to hear. Yeah, because I mean, the film was excellent. I really enjoyed watching it.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, thanks, Will. Yeah, I sort of, like I was sort of saying earlier, I didn't hold back with the when I was writing the film. And I probably went a bit too ambitious with it. It ended up taking a lot longer than I expected. And I think part of this was, I actually was developing the idea for this film whilst writing my thesis for my PhD. So during lockdown in 2020, I had a lot of time for, like, you know, with everything locked down, the only activity I was really doing was sort of walking around Lancaster. Lancaster, if you don't know, it's northwest of England. It's a very beautiful area to live. So there's lots of places to walk. And I would sort of, every day while writing my thesis, I'd have a break where I'd do a walk. And I just sort of had these ideas for this film. I think when you're working on something like a thesis, it's like quite, can be quite stressful at times. Sometimes that's when you can be at like your most creative. So because it's kind of like you're escaping from your work, do you know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So like I go on these walks, I just have all these crazy ideas, and I'd be listening to like music as well, to sort of bring these ideas to life in my mind. And that's where the plot for this film was born, on those walks. And so when I finally handed in my thesis at the end of 2020, I was doing some part-time work at the university for a bit, and I started working on the brick film. I sort of realised as I started filming, like, I went probably a bit too ambitious of this. And it took me, I was only expecting to be filming for like 3-4 months, but it actually ended up taking like 6-7 months of just for the filming. and then I had to do the editing after that. So, but it seems to have paid off. People seem to like it. So there you go.
And of course, the ambition really keeps it engaging for the full nearly 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that it ended up being 15 minutes long. That's definitely... is that my longest Brick film? I think it is my longest Brick film. Certainly my longest action-based Brick film. No, it definitely is my longest Brick film, actually, thinking about it. Yeah.
What's impressive with that as well is that it doesn't feel like that, It goes by really quickly.
Okay, all right. I'm glad, because I was very concerned actually that it was going to be a little bit too long, and that might put people off. So I'm pleased to hear that it's engaging. And actually, I have had some friends come up to me and people in the YouTube comments as well saying that they properly got engrossed in the narrative, and yeah, the 15 minutes just flies by. I'm really pleased that's how people feel, and that they don't get bored halfway through, because that was a concern for when I realised how long it was going to be. I did actually consider at one point releasing it in 2 parts, but I'm glad I didn't. I think it deserves to just sort of be a single film. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thanks guys. I'm glad that you found it engrossing anyway.
I actually wanted to briefly mention, came to mind just earlier then, kind of on the other end of the scale when it comes to how ambitious your films are. I think I was just reminded of I think possibly the first film I saw of yours, which is Gollum does Gangnam Style in Lego. And I remember absolutely loving that. I think it was absolutely hilarious.
Wow, yeah. I wasn't expecting that one to be brought up. To be honest, I sort of forgot that Brick film existed. Yeah, that was a really interesting one. I think I was at university when I made that, and it was the Christmas break, and yeah, my brother was getting all the Hobbit Lego sets, or Lord of the Ring Lego sets, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So, and also when I went to university, I was a fresher in 2012, and Gangnam Style was the biggest thing that had ever happened. So somehow the two things combined, and I created the masterpiece that is Gollum Does Gangnam Style in Lego. I think that was actually my first and perhaps only attempt to make something topical. Yeah, and I never, it didn't catch on. I don't think I ever tried again. But yeah, shout out to that film. Yeah.
I just love the end when Frodo comes and just shoots him.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that idea came from. Yeah, and then the Looney Tunes ending as well. It's just a mashup of all kinds of stuff.
So yeah, I mean, I was saying about how much the Lego London Bank Robbery inspired me. It has one of the first Brick films I ever saw. I think the same kind of applies to that as well. I think both of them were very inspirational to me.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Well,
they're on equal footing.
Yeah. I'm hoping the bank robbery one was a little bit more inspirational than the Gollum Does Gangnam Style. But yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that my films could act as inspiration for you. And actually, I've had over the years, I had more and more people comment similar sorts of things to what you're saying, that oh yeah, this is one of the first Brick films I saw and got me into Brick filming. I recently did a live stream. I'm trying to do a live stream every Christmas. And there were some people on there who are new to Brick filming, but they were saying how they were inspired by my films, and we actually watched some of their Brick films, and it's very flattering to hear people say things like that, because of course when you make these films you never think oh yeah, this is something that's going to inspire people. It's just sort of when these early Brick films, it's just like a hobby really. But now that Brick filming is like a whole world of itself, it's kind of
it's like a world of Brick films.
Yes. Very good. Yeah. It's I'm trying to think you've derailed my train of thought there. Yeah, it's like it's nice to be established as kind of one of the early animators, and to have your films inspire people to make their own. I think that's something that is it's funny. Like, obviously, I've been pursuing sort of a career in academia with my physics, but like I think it's that the joy of making films and like the joy of seeing people inspired by your films is what I think keeps pulling me back to Lego animating. There is definitely like a huge level of satisfaction I get from that actually I don't think any other job I could do would give me. So yeah.
But of course, speaking of like influences, again, we ought to ask if there's any films that particularly inspired you, or what were maybe some of the earliest Brick films you were watching when you started Brick filming.
Yeah, okay. So this is a great question, Sean, and. Actually, when you invited me to be part of this podcast, I started like my brain went into like overdrive, thinking like, oh, what were like all the films that did inspire me? Because there are loads, to be honest, and it all comes from that like initial wave. I think in like 2007 to 2009, that kind of early young YouTube brick film wave, which I was part of, but my stuff at that time was very low quality. Whereas there were already some pretty amazing animations actually being uploaded at that time. So I actually...
a lot of the best ones were re-uploads, the stuff that people had been making for years prior on brickfilms.com. Like The Letter. I did you ever see The Letter? Because it kind of reminds me of your stuff with all the traffic and the people walking around and so much activity.
Who's that by again? Is that the one where...
A guy called James FM.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I will have seen it. Is that the one where there's a guy with a letter and he's getting chased by like a whole bunch of people?
Well, he's not exactly getting chased, but he just keeps on having unfortunate incidents, like he keeps getting knocked over, or
I'm almost certain I've seen these. Yeah, that kind of comedy is like a classic. It's a very classic like 2007 brick film era sort of style. But like you said, like a lot of these brick films that were uploaded at that time did were made before. So for example, I actually made a list of brick films because I thought I'd forget some of them. But one of the first brick films I really enjoyed was Out of Time by Oblong Pictures. And in fact, Oblong Pictures, which I believe is run by Chris Salt, was one of the first like YouTube channels that I really like fell in love with, like his style of like stop motion. Very like at that time it was like very smooth, and also like he would have like really good comedy. And so Out of Time I really enjoyed. That was about like these two guys going for a Sunday walk, and then like these time travelers from the 80s just appear.
Yeah,
it's a great. I really love that one. Like, it's
one of the all-time classics.
Yeah,
sure,
it is one of the all-time classics. Yeah, and deservedly so. I also like his Where'd the Cheese Go? I think I remember listening to that whilst making my own animations, just because it was like such a strange song, but such a great video. But I think Out of Time was actually made in 2003, but like you said, he re-uploaded it in like the 2007 era. That one inspired me to try and up my quality, I think, of film. I sort of realised like how good Lego animation could look. I also remember getting a similar kind of feeling from Mind Game Studios, who I would watch back then as well. And there were some other people. So there was... Have you guys heard of Funny Boys Films?
Yeah.
By Simon Lunt? Yeah. Really enjoyed his content. He did like, I think a zombie film and like Halloween AGM. I really enjoyed all of them.
Yeah, this stuff would be pretty much unknown these days, but I remember, yeah.
Yeah. This is the funny thing though. Like a lot of these early animations, which at the time would have been seen as very big, and like basically everyone who's brick filming at the time would have watched them. It's like, yeah, by today's YouTube standards, it's like no one's heard of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I've kind of been trying to, bring back at least a little bit of awareness to the older stuff in recent years.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because there's a lot of good stuff there. Have you seen the Lego Beer song by Andreas?
Yeah. Now that's one that I think people still know about nowadays. I mean, who doesn't know the beer song? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that achieved like a level of fame that I think did take it just outside of just the brick filming community. I mean, it's an all-time classic. In fact, I think they recently uploaded, like maybe last year, some extra footage regarding that film, but I've not seen that yet. But I want to.
Yeah, I did see that. It was like for the 15-year anniversary of the beer song, they put up. It was a lot of footage. It was like 15 or 20 minutes. It was
wow.
Basically, the beer song had actually been just one short clip out of a much longer film, but the longer film was never finished. I think maybe the audio wasn't done. I don't know. I can't remember now if the footage they uploaded had any audio apart from the beer song clip. But yes, so there's a much greater story behind the beer song, and it was actually made in 2004, but just uploaded in 2006.
Right.
YouTube.
Okay. Gosh.
But nobody had ever seen it before then. Like, it wasn't posted on brickfilms.com in 04. It was just first
they just sort of had
in
it on their computer.
Yeah.
Waiting to be shared with the world. Yeah. I'm very intrigued by this like grand motion picture they were working on. I'm trying to figure out how that like how that song can fit into like a greater narrative. So that'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, that's an absolute classic. I'm pretty sure there's like more classics that I'm forgetting as well. I mean, of course, everyone remembers the Eddie Izzard Lego clips as well. Yeah, I mean, that's something that like I actually have people all the time when they learn about, you know, my Lego animation, they always mention, I watch these Eddie Izzard clips, you know, Darth Vader at the canteen in Lego, these kind of things, or Cake or Death, and they were probably like, I don't know, could we say they were like the first properly like viral brick films? I don't know, maybe not, but they're definitely one of the first. Because everyone I know has watched them. Yeah.
The only thing I remember about those is being terribly confused as to why they got so many views when they were of such low quality.
That's the funny thing, yeah. And again, it falls back to the fact that sometimes it's the content that draws the viewer in over the actual like techniques, shall we say, of the film, which in some ways is a bit of a shame, because obviously then you get some people working on a masterpiece and then it doesn't do as well. Even though a lot more work's gone into it. But yeah, those Eddie Izzard clips, I mean, they're probably only a few frames, but everybody's watched them. Yeah. Yeah.
It is kind of funny though, like I remember that with again when I was like first getting into brick films, where I'd watch some, you know, videos where it will be audio from something else. And that's the only kind of thing that really makes it kind of like why people like it. Because the actual video itself is kind of like, you know, there's like a couple of frames, you know, I've seen a few, you know, I remember watching a few like that at the time.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, if like you say, the audio or whatever engages with people, then that does help the video do well.
The brick filmers were doing TikTok before TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's another thing. It's like with TikTok coming up, sometimes I wonder, like, should I do animation for TikTok? But nah, I don't think I will.
I feel like too much of a boomer to learn about new websites at this stage.
Yeah.
I know YouTube.
I think as well, like, one of the things I enjoy about animating is at the end of your hard work, you have a film that is, you know, it feels like you're filmmaker. Do you know what I mean? You do the stop motion, you do the sound, you do the editing and everything, and you've created a film that can be enjoyed on YouTube or whatever. Whereas like for TikTok, it's sort of like it doesn't have that feel. It's just sort of like you're making content, and making content is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'd rather make something with like a narrative, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
In landscape.
I think with that kind of thing as well, there isn't like it's not like it's a right or wrong sort of like perspective. It's more of a, how do you see the stuff that you make? Do you see it more as like videos, or do you see it more as like films?
Yeah.
And I definitely think that like with YouTube, what I like is, you know, having a playlist of of evergreen content, basically, where it's like, this is my filmography, rather than it being like, here's a video that kind of like within, like a couple of days, it's like gone. Now it's the next one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, I do think Brick films, I mean, as the name suggests, they are films. They're not videos. So like we've been discussing throughout this podcast, we're talking about all these old Brick films that exist that we might still rewatch today. And there are Brick films that are coming out that, people will be watching for years to come. It's not just like passive content. It's, Brick films can tell a story. They can be entertaining. They can make the audience feel a certain way, just like live action films can. So that's one of the things I like about the medium, is actually that it's not just creating content; it's creating movies, films.
Yeah, I mean, I had that in mind when making my most recent major Brick film project. I was thinking to myself, this is far too niche to get a lot of views, and I know that all fine and well, but like I was thinking to myself, I better make this good enough that hopefully for years to come people will still say, hey, this is a good Brick film, and point other people to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I think stop motion actually is kind of a timeless medium in of itself. It's like, I mean, stop motion I think is having a bit of a resurgence just generally because it does have a nice aesthetic to it. But like when you make a stop motion film, as long as your camera's semi decent, it doesn't lose its like charm over time.
Yeah, charm.
So if you make when you make a Brick film, there's no real limit on how long it can be enjoyed for. And just going back to the point we were making earlier, I think it all comes down to the creator about what content they're happy creating. So like we're discussing, with our Brick films, it's like we like to make something that makes us satisfied that we've created something good and of value that can be watched for however long. It's not just a sort of a job that you kind of like, we just need to get from A to B and get it done. It's like you want to get this level of satisfaction from the process and create something of value. And that's how I see it anyway.
To backtrack a little bit, I wonder, would you have anything in mind that you could point to that might have inspired your style? Like, were there any Brick films, or maybe things that aren't Brick films, that inspired the expansive sets and the scenarios you have in your Brick films? Because it's pretty unusual, like unlike most other Brick films.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it just straight from your imagination?
So, actually, the inspiration for my style probably comes from outside Brick films. So I certainly got inspired by some of the Brick films I mentioned earlier for like realizing the potential of the medium.
Yeah.
But actually my style, when I was a kid, I would be obsessed with action sequences. So probably the most direct inspiration I had was Wallace and Gromit. Mm-hmm. Created by Nick Park of Aardman Animations in Bristol. And in particular, the episode The Wrong Trousers, which is an absolute masterpiece. And for me personally, it's the best stop motion animation ever made.
Possibly the best short film ever made.
Yeah. It's I encourage anyone who's not seen it to watch it. And anyway, the whole film is a masterpiece. It's sort of a stop motion take on like classic horror films, but mixed with this like Lancashire, this elderly Lancashire man and his dog. And it's brilliant. But in particular was the train chase sequence at the end, which is an absolutely fantastic action sequence. And definitely a direct inspiration for me. I think, actually, when I'm creating my animation, sometimes I think like, can I take the feeling I get when I watch that train chase from Wallace and Gromit and essentially turn that into a 10-minute video?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can totally see the connection there.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure, yeah.
And also something else that isn't stop motion related that was an inspiration was Indiana Jones. I was obsessed with the Indiana Jones films when I was younger. I would rewatch them all the time, and just that sense of adrenaline you get when you watch the action sequences in an Indiana Jones film, with vehicles chasing each other. I think there even is a train chase at the beginning of one of them. Motorbikes, boats, cliff edges, people falling off stuff. All of that was definitely a direct inspiration that I funneled into my animations. And I think that those two are the main elements that contributed to my love of making action sequences. Unfortunately, there weren't that many like actual Lego animation action sequences. There are plenty now, but when I started, there weren't so many. There were some though, I think, but I mainly got my inspiration from outside of Lego stop motion.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like the brick films you were mentioning as the ones you were watching early on, they're not particularly similar to the stuff you would go on to make yourself. So yeah. So I think it was the mixture of the inspiration from seeing what people could do with brick filming, and then on top of that, these other passions in film that I had, that kind of combined. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to do it. Yeah, to bring in multiple sources of influence.
Yeah, I think it's worked for me quite well.
Well, I think you can there's definitely like whenever someone does that with brick films, you can really tell like there's influence outside of just other brick films, and I think it's always good. I think it's great to be inspired by brick films, of course, but like I think it's also good to kind of like expand what things you could be influenced from. Mm-hmm. With whether it be like live action or other forms of stop motion, like Wallace and Gromit, something like that, because I think it enables you to do things that maybe you haven't actually seen that often within brick filming, and yeah, I think that's something that I definitely feel like you managed to achieve with a lot of your like sort of chase action orientated films, was that kind of sense of doing something that wasn't necessarily totally taking influence from another brick film.
I agree. I think I did realize that I was bringing something new to the scene when I really got involved in watching other people's brick films and struggling to find like these like long action sequences that I was making. But that being said, of course, I only really started doing the animation action sequences around 2010, 2011. I think that's when I started the Police Chase trilogy. And I think maybe by that point, other people were starting to do more ambitious action sequences in their films. Yeah, I actually have an animator down here, PE668. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but I think he did some like kind of more action-y based stuff as well.
The funny thing is, I've actually picked one of his films for the showcase segment specifically because it reminded me of your work.
Okay, brilliant. Well, there we go then. There we go. I mean, he's a classic animator. I loved his stuff when I got into brick filming. He had actually had an amazing frame rate. But anyway, perhaps we could discuss that when we get to the showcase. But yeah, there you go.
But yeah, that's like one person. There's not a lot you could point to that were similar at that time period.
I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure. The thing is, I'm going to find all these like amazing action sequences after this podcast that people have made. It's just like right now, I can't think of many. We did mention Studios Epsilon. I know his Copyright film had a good action sequence in it. I'm trying to
and
think
of course,
when that came out.
He
though.
also mentioned, the Wallace and Gromit influence. It comes up pretty often on this podcast, yeah.
Okay, you know what? I'm not surprised. I'm pretty sure Wallace and Gromit has inspired a lot of stop motion artists, Lego or otherwise.
Yeah.
Just because, yeah, as I said, it's an absolute masterpiece.
There's actually, this is going sort of way after like what, this is way more recent. But I don't know if you've heard of Alexander Studios.
I have. This is the guy that does like Lego people go swimming or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of funny
he did
because
a train chase as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Lego train
of course,
crash.
he did the train chase with the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, his stuff is actually really impressive. Even though on the surface, you'd be forgiven for thinking it's just going to be YouTube Kids core, but then if you actually give it a chance, it's really good.
Yeah.
Actually, I haven't really talked about like that for like a really long time, but like, are you kind of like familiar with the kind of era of like, I guess like Michael Hickox, but also like Michael Hickox kind of like clones, and a lot of like very kind of like brick films are very sort of generic like titles, like Lego Shopping or Lego Shark Attack or
I am aware of this wave of films, and it's one of those things where obviously this content resonates with like a lot of people. Like those videos do really well, and they are like kind of adorable to watch. Like you say, Lego people go shopping or whatever.
I can see how they kind of appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see it as well. I think people like seeing reflections of the real world in Lego form, and I think that's what these videos tap into. It's kind of quite, like I said, it's kind of cute to watch.
Yeah.
It's certainly not something that particularly resonates with me, but I appreciate that a lot of people enjoy that content. I think those guys are doing a great job at making all these different scenarios.
But I feel like it would actually be interesting to examine your work and then compare it to those people, and sort of, if somebody wanted to learn like how to make something really good, your stuff has really good pace to it. It's really fast paced and it keeps moving. But I feel like a lot of those YouTube Kids channels, they're so slow and there's just so much walking. Like it takes forever to get just the next thing that happens.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Like a sort of a 30-second opening sequence of just someone walking to a location, just to.
Absolutely, yeah. Because like Lego walking takes up a surprising amount of time. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, especially as an animator, like, but. Yeah, do you know what I think it is? I think those films, it's like you're saying, it's I think it's parents putting it on for their kids, because parents, I mean, it's probably an absolute godsend for parents that they can have this access to all these Lego animations that keep their kids occupied, and then they can just do whatever they want while their kids watch YouTube. It's kind of ideal. So. Yeah, I guess like as a kid, you probably don't care that the walking takes 30 seconds, but yeah, as adults, it's kind of like get on with it. We want to see something happen.
Yeah.
But it's funny though. I was just gonna say that I feel like in a way, that kind of wave of like very sort of children kind of oriented, kids oriented brick films. They're kind of like, I'd say like from like 2010 to like. I don't know. I was just thinking then. Have we kind of got to a point where it's almost sort of plateaued or like not really?
Well, they changed the algorithm. There was controversies with YouTube Kids.
Yeah.
So it's partially killed off that wave.
Right. Okay. Because kids' videos aren't as profitable anymore. Is that the issue there? Yeah. Yeah. Because when that came in, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure my content's for kids, and I switched a few of my videos over for kids, and like, yeah, it's horrible because you lose all the comments. No one can add your videos to playlists. And getting feedback from people is like such a huge part of what I enjoy about being a YouTuber.
It is really sad. I find like going into looking at old brick films or whatever. you kind of want to see what the comments are. And you know, for a lot of them, it's like there's just no comments, and it takes away so much of it. Like that, there's no like interaction.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like doing, you know, whether it's just like to sort of laugh at comments or whatever, like I like seeing what other people's reactions were to things, and it's really weird not having that. But yeah, no, it is interesting. I think
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
one of the things I do find as well. I can say this now as like as someone who has hosted a THAC. I don't know if you're familiar with THAC.
I am familiar with FAC. Unfortunately, I've never entered FAC. I feel like if I'm organised enough, I would like to do that. I think it'd be really fun. But I'm very aware of it, yes.
But yeah, no, like now having like the playlists of, there's always going to be a few, you know, at least a few entries where their channel was set to like kids, and there's this whole thing of like if they're unlisted, you can't actually put it on a playlist, and then you have to tell them, can you change the setting, all that kind of stuff, and it makes the whole thing, you know, it makes the whole thing sort of drag.
Because we want to have the playlist with every entry in it, but then there's a certain number of entries we can't add to the playlist, and we have to start messaging the people. It's really annoying.
But then also on the other end, you've got people like that really want the playlist, you know, like as soon as possible. So it's like, you just got to battle.
Yeah,
like 5 minutes after the contest ends, people are saying, "Where's the link to the playlist?"
Yeah.
So I can't think of a single reason why videos that are designed for kids cannot be added to playlists. I'm really unsure what the logic is there. Maybe you guys know.
It's all to do with laws about collecting information on people under 13.
Right.
So like, I'm not sure. It's complicated, I guess, but
Wasn't actually. So this is the thing, and I don't know how long I want to kind of get into this because it's kind of like going to be derail the conversation. But like, it wasn't part of the whole controversy about like advertising to kids. But like, what I find really funny about that is like, if you go onto like a you know, like a children's like TV channel, like traditional, like I don't know, it's everything. It's so manipulative. The whole like the commercials all about like buy this thing now, and it's really mad to me like how the internet is like against that, but like traditional TV has always been, you know.
Well, the people on the internet who are concerned about that, that's not exactly a legal concern, whereas the whole collecting information on kids is a legal concern. So like, if kids are leaving comments, you know, the comment is saved in YouTube's database, you know, so it's collecting something that a kid has written, you know, or I guess people adding videos to playlists is the same. Like if
right,
I don't know, there's two different concerns there.
What I don't understand though is that if a kid is on the internet, almost every website they visit will be collecting data on them of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know what the situation is in America, because I believe these are American laws, but I don't know how they're clamping down on every other website, basically.
Well, you know, every website in its rules will say you have to be 13 plus to make an account.
Right. Okay.
So it's kind of like, I guess it's just one of those situations where, everybody knows that people under 13 are going to be using the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. So, to conclude my adventure with this little legal curiosity of YouTube, I put my videos for kids, or like some of them. And my earnings absolutely plummeted, and I was getting disappointed that I couldn't see the comments and all this. So I changed it back, and YouTube messaged me saying like, you know, why do you want to change it back? And I simply said like, you know, I really value interaction from my fan base. My content is for all ages. It's not just for kids.
I was going to say, your stuff, it's not specifically only, you know, it would appeal to people who are older than kids, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does. And, you know, like I said, actually a lot of people who watch my content now are people who used to watch it when they were kids and now want to that nostalgia trip, I guess. And anyway, YouTube then accepted my response and changed it back, and I will not go back to putting it for kids.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, like, I'm pretty sure Michael Hickox has kind of slowed down on making big films, and Titan Pictures has pretty much stopped. You know, and for a while he was posting on Twitter about how, like, yeah, the algorithm has completely screwed him, and he's not getting any views or income anymore.
Yeah, I think it is kind of mad though. Like Michael Hickok's, like, yeah, I think I was just looking then on his YouTube channel. He hasn't uploaded anything since like for like 9 months.
9 months, okay.
Whether he's actually sort of just like not doing it anymore or what. I know that like
because he used to post pretty relentlessly, didn't he? He used to be
was
churning them out.
Yeah, really hard for a while there.
Yeah,
like once a week or something, for a while, and then like he would, and some of the views he'd get, like, I think we're going like beyond 100 million, wasn't it? With some of them, was it 100 million or?
Yeah.
A lot of the older ones, yeah. But then when he was making videos very frequently, most recently, like it had, the algorithm had changed and it wasn't the same as it was.
To be honest, this is something I'm kind of, I feel like I'm discovering now for myself. Now, obviously, I make very different content, and the YouTube algorithm hasn't been too brutal against me, in the fact that, like we were mentioning, my new video is doing pretty well. But it's like it is a new world since I made my last big film, which was only like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, in those 4 and 5 years is when all of the big news stories and changes occurred. yeah,
exactly. So I am trying to find my feet a bit now that I'm going back into making YouTube content again and trying to relearn the ropes. And yeah, the algorithm is a tough thing to figure out. I don't think even YouTube know what the algorithm's doing anymore. I think it's a black box, isn't it?
It's out of control.
It's just gone out of control. So yeah, I mean, since I uploaded my new video, it's like, well, initially in December it was doing really well, and then since then it's just kind of been a bit chaotic. January's always a bit of a weird time for YouTube, so it's just like I don't really know what the algorithm's doing with my channel, but it's just riding the waves at the moment of views.
I'm actually currently rewatching Lego Train Crash by Alexander Studios right now, and it's funny because, like, on the surface level, it reminds me of your work because, it's like there's no dialogue and, it's a train chase, of course. But, like, the first 5 minutes or so is people slowly walking around. It takes ages before you get to the actual chase portion of it. And it's like a 12-minute film, so it's similar length to your big films, but, like, your stuff is engaging the whole way through, and it's an action scene for the entire runtime, so... Yeah,
that film definitely picks up towards the end. It's a good point. And the thing is, I think there are different aesthetic styles with Lego animation, like there is with any medium of filmmaking. And I think some people really enjoy the kind of there's like a sort of clean charm to Lego, isn't there? Your nice grids, everything's built up quite nicely. And so just that kind of vibe of seeing Lego figures walking around, doing things, I think some people really like that. I probably agree with you, Sean. It's a little bit dull to watch. I'd rather see something like engaging within the narrative happening. And actually, when I write any of the storyboards for my films, I always think like, what can I have at the beginning that sort of will bring people in, or like at least in the first couple of minutes, something engaging to happen. Because I think that is important for getting people invested into the film, and then that will carry them through to the end. Actually, for my latest film, the Baracuda Heist, it's the first film I made with like kind of a really nice introduction sequence, and that entire introduction sequence was designed to introduce the setting, introduce some of the major characters, which will all come up later. And so, at least in my mind, that meant that the film would make more sense for people as they watch it, and also get them invested in the film early on, so they actually stick through the entire 15 minutes.
That's something that like is really valuable with like a great sort of like action sequence, and not something that a lot of people probably think about too much when it comes to like the short kind of runtime of a an average brick film. Because there's obviously a lot of brick films there it's literally just the action, whereas like I like that with your films, especially with your recent one, is how like you set up everything so it's like getting you prepared. You're learning like sort of like I guess like the geography of it a bit, but also like just like everything that's kind of like gonna happen, and then it kind of prepares you then for like the whole thing, doesn't it?
Joe, I really appreciate that you said that, Will, because sometimes I wonder, like, why am I putting sort of time into, sort of dressing up the action sequence, with the location and perhaps even like, like the kind of, I guess, the narrative that sort of underlines the action sequence. Because in theory, I could probably save a lot of time if I just make the action sequence and don't worry about any of the external stuff to that. But yeah, I appreciate your comments, because I think it is really important to include just a little bit of context to the action sequence. It just has to be just a little bit that then really kind of... It really adds, because then when you're watching the action sequence, it's like, okay, like this character did this because of this reason, or, this makes sense that these people would do that because of whatever. And yeah, like with the, my most recent pirate film, I remember, as I was mentioning, when I was going on these walks, coming up with the film idea, I was like, a lot of pirate films take place in the Caribbean, but it doesn't actually feel like it's in the Caribbean. And like, for example, Pirates of the Caribbean, it has Caribbean in the name. And I mean, okay, aesthetically, it does kind of look like the Caribbean, but there aren't actually that many Caribbean characters in it at all. So I was thinking, right, I'm going to try and really sell that this film is in that place of the world. And I did... I tried to include that vibe as much as possible, both with the set and the music and the characters. And then, and also, I tried to make it really feel like it was during the golden age of piracy, with the different groups. You've got the pirates, you've got the Imperials, you've got the local people who live there. I tried to really sell that time and that place in the film. And I think that does add to the film. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the most impressive things about your stuff, is how it feels like the events are taking place in an actual world. That's a living world.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's the thing. And I think, I'm really pleased you said that, because, obviously I'm not wasting my time by doing that. I think doing that is really important. Again, as a way of getting people invested and engrossed in the video, and it means that they actually watch the film to the end. If there's that just little bit of like realism to it, I think like a lot of Lego animators do pirate films, and a lot of them are absolutely brilliant. And like, actually, I think there's if you like Lego and you like pirates, there's so many great films you can watch now. But I do think that a lot of these pirate films, my own ones included from back in the day, it's like, it's just like there's just a ship in the middle of the ocean with no explanation. Maybe there's like a big fort that the ship's going past, and it's just sort of like, there's no context to it. It's just sort of like pirates against the Imperials. That's it. And it's like, I mean, in some ways that's all you need, but I definitely think sprinkling a little bit of context and world building really does make your film stand out, and that's what I try to achieve with the latest one.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
But I guess, should we head over to the Brickfilm Showcase?
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Nice. For those of you new to the podcast, the Brickfilm Showcase is an opportunity for each of us to talk about brick films that either mean a lot to us or that we want to talk about in general. Nice. So I guess I'll start then. My pick was True Love Waits by Chris Boyer, also known as Sloth Paladin, also known as Robots with Knives.
and he was co-producing his films with Brian Bridges at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, like it was funny, and I was trying to find a film to pick, and I wanted something that was pirate themed. I was scrolling through Brickfilms wiki, and so I came across this one. Obviously, I was familiar with it before. It was a while since I last saw it, But yeah, I thought this was an apt pick with space pirates, and yeah, it's kind of I remember talking to Chris, I think about this way back on like one of the very first episodes of the podcast, and talk about like his inspirations from like it being like a B movie. Yeah, I just love how like the sort of directions this goes, where you have these people like turning into pirates. I really love actually the acting in this is pretty funny as well. I love the screams.
That was the first thing that caught my attention was the screaming.
Yeah, all the voice acting is really funny.
Yeah, one of the things as well like, that kind of drew my attention a bit was just like the it having like it doesn't even have 300 views, which I thought was crazy. I always imagined it being something that like I don't know a decent amount of people have seen.
Well, it was a classic in the Brickfilms.com community. It was a TAC 2 entry in 2006. So, the upload you're watching now is a much long after the fact upload.
Right, okay. Yeah, because actually, in terms of the ambition of the film, it's pretty amazing. Like you're saying, I'm surprised it has so few views on YouTube. That must be down to the upload date more than anything. Because, yeah, back in 2006, this would have been mind-blowing.
But of course, this was from the era when people would download the file directly. Like, before view counts.
It's definitely true what you say as well about getting that B movie vibe across. It does that really well. That makes it a sort of enjoyable in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
I also really like the non-Lego elements that he's added to it, like the city kind of like build. I thought that was really well done, and like especially considering that like it was at least largely done during THAC. It's pretty ambitious.
Was that a FAQ entry or?
Well, the version that was released for THAC is shorter. This is like they finished it later.
Right. Okay. That seems to be how a lot of these FAQ projects go. Like, like it's unfinished and then they make it into a bigger thing afterwards.
As far as I remember, the cities, the interesting city build is like, I think they had that left over from the robotic turkey brick film that they made in 2005, which is also certainly worth a watch.
I'm going to subscribe to this guy. This is great.
But yeah, it's a really large scale for the time period.
The space effects, like the flying ships, is really impressive. I'm not quite sure actually how they've done it. Whether that's, I mean, it just looks so good. Are they hanging by ropes or something?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's on a string, although the movement actually seems really consistent. Usually if you hang something on a string, it's bouncing all over the place and just looks terrible.
Yeah. It looks like they've pulled it off with stop motion. Like the objects are stationary, but it's like, but how?
Yeah, I feel like they've always been really impressive in terms of like special effects and stuff, which I think you see if you watch like more of the videos as well. I do highly recommend, especially I'm not sure if it's on this channel or Chris's other channel, but Beyond the 11th Dimension, which is similar vibes to this, but on a kind of much bigger scale in sort of like HD era.
Yeah, I guess it is sort of like this times 100.
Yeah. Okay, I will. After the podcast, I am definitely going to check this guy out because, I can see there's definitely like some really good techniques being deployed here. Mm-hmm. And if this is what they're doing in 2006, I want to see what they did later. So,
if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure he said that like they were having a hard time making the dialogue for the police officers corny enough, and they were like, they'd watch Plan 9 from Outer Space, like bring it up so that they could accurately make the dialogue worse.
I love the guy in the car and like I love you, Patricia. All the dialogue and that, so that's really funny.
Goes back to what you're saying about B movies, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, should we I guess head over to Penta, your pick for the showcase.
So I decided to pick a film called Train to Catch by David Boddy, who was known either as Bodville or PE668. And I mentioned earlier that I specifically chose this one because it actually reminded me of your own work in that.
Right, okay.
Yeah, there's no dialogue, and it's very action oriented, and it's a chase sequence, and there's a lot of different sets. Like, it's always moving from one set to the next, and it's pretty early for a film like this. Like, it's 2008 he made it, and I remember it from the time, and he entered it into 2 different official Lego contests in 2008, and he managed to win the second one.
Wow.
But yeah, actually, an interesting thing about this guy is that, we often remark that there's not a lot of crossover between people who create mocks and people who make brick films, but he came from, before he was making brick films, he was just making large Lego displays, and like I think at conventions he'd do big train layouts,
Yeah.
which of course plays into this film being about a train. But yeah, it's just a fun film that's like really frenetic, although as far as I remember he did full 30 FPS stop motion, and for my tastes everything is too fast.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, like you're saying, this is an early example of an action sequence. I mean, the fact that he went all in for 30 frames a second is incredible.
It is crazy.
I mean, I can't even imagine how long this must have taken. And like, the animation is just really enjoyable to watch. I mean, I agree. I'm definitely not like a 30 FPS fan. I generally prefer people shooting in 2s, so like 12 frames or 15 frames a second. But like, somehow I feel like with this animator, he pulls it off. It's like sort of his style of animation.
There certainly is style to it, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like you could have shown me this video and not told me who it was from, and I would have recognized like, oh yeah, it's that animator. Just because like it's so, like, the music as well. The music's fantastic in this.
Yeah, I think he had a friend who did original music for him.
No way. So is it an original? It's an original score, or is it just like?
Certainly, some of his other brick films do have original music. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because it's really good. The music.
That shot, like when the guy falls, is so good, and then like he lands and he turns to a skeleton, and it's so good.
And then there's always that like dark twist to this guy's films. I've noticed.
I just love as well the ending when the guy is going around the briefcase. Spider-Man comes along and he and it's like made to be the hero. So good.
But yeah, it's huge scale of sets. Really impressive.
Yeah,
and I guess that also is what reminded me of your work.
No, I can see how you're drawing the link then, and actually, I'm quite flattered that you're comparing me to this guy, because I think this guy is extremely ambitious with his set design and stuff, and the animation and the narrative. Something that is funny is that the scene when he's climbing on the crane. I have an almost identical scene in my bank robbery scene when he's just climbing along the top. So that's quite funny. There's a lot that happens in this film. Like, it's, even though it's only like a minute and a bit.
Yeah,
it's just like there's just a lot of stuff going on. Great choice.
Action on cranes and action on trains. Those always hit in films.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I actually really like the backgrounds.
In
this
they're
as
really
well.
really strange. They were green screened, and the backgrounds are created in Lego Digital Designer.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, he green screened it.
There's a behind the scenes picture on the wiki that shows one of the LDD builds that he made for the backgrounds.
No way.
And he actually managed to combine them really well. Like, even though obviously the background is digital, but like it actually looks surprisingly good.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really think about it too much. I sort of assumed that most of it would have been a backdrop, that like an image or something.
And then you see as well, like there's like several layers as well.
Yeah.
Of backgrounds that move.
Yeah.
The train and stuff.
But I actually feel like I like the look of these digital backgrounds better than a lot of the other digital set extensions that people were doing in this era.
Yeah.
The Nick Duran films. But should we talk about the third showcase pick?
Yeah. So great picks, both of you actually, but they were both great. I've chosen The Quest for the Platinum Waffle by E Animation.
Nice.
And can I just do a shout out to one that I considered, but I ended up choosing this one instead.
Yeah, sure.
Which was Plastic Love, Henry and Edmund episode by Maxime Marion. Because that film is incredible and everyone should watch it. Yes. Anyway, so back to my actual choice. Quest for the Platinum Waffle. I chose this because it's an early animation. It has an incredible frame rate, a bit like the Train to Catch that Sean chose. The comedy, I'd say is pretty tight throughout the animation. There's a few odd jokes in there, but like on whole, the comedy is absolutely excellent. And the main reason I chose this film for the showcase is the action sequence involving a wonderful fight scene between Indiana Jones and a whole bunch of skeletons, set to the music of Orpheus in the Underworld by Offenbach, otherwise known as the Can Can song, which is one of the best examples of music and action timing in a Lego animation I think that exists. And I always like to try and incorporate good music in my films, and I think this was definitely part of the inspiration behind that. Quest of the Platinum Waffle by E Animation. Yeah,
that's a great observation about the timing. Because I think everybody who started the time we did remembers the animation well, and of course Average Death Star Day. I think everybody knows. Yeah. But whenever I revisit this film, even though the quality is horrendous, I'm always impressed that the animation itself actually holds up really well, and the comedy actually, for the most part, holds up really well.
This is the thing. I mean, it looks like the resolution is horrific. I mean, I totally agree. But like the dedication to the animation, despite the hardware, is just, you got to appreciate that.
Yeah. And as far as I remember, they did 24 FPS animation.
24
pretty
FPS,
rare.
Yeah, that seems about right. Also, I mean, you might know this, Sean, because I've never known how this has been done. The sequence with the whip, where like Indiana Jones whips his the guy he's with. How was that done? I have absolutely no idea. Every time I see it, I'm just like, I cannot figure that out. He just gets this incredible whip action in full 24 FPS. I don't know how on earth he did it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, because it does look incredible, like the motion of the whip. Actually, is it just that it's like one of those plastic ties that you can just manipulate, like basically like a tiny armature?
Maybe. Is it like a pipe cleaner?
Like, I have one of these, just so happens to be on the desk now. It's like something you'd use to tie cables together, I think.
Okay, that could be it. I mean, it's had me stumped for so many years, but that could be it. But like you say, I think some of the, if anyone's listening to this now and decides to watch this film, I think some of the humor is okay, it's all right, but then some of the moments are just absolutely hilarious.
Something I always remember about this film is that in 2008, it was like there was a plague of low quality Indiana Jones brick films. Like, they were absolutely endless. Most of them would be forgotten now, but at the time it felt like you couldn't move for all the Indiana Jones brick films that were coming out, and people on Bricks in Motion would always complain about them. But usually when people would start complaining about them, somebody would say, oh, well, what about Indiana Scones and the Quest of the Platinum Waffle? That was a good one. And everybody would be like, okay, yeah, that was a good one.
And they're right to say that. Yeah. Because I was actually part of that wave. I remember the Crystal Skull had come out in the cinema. And yeah, I think I actually watched Indiana Scones. I forgot to mention it's Indiana Scones. Good point, Sean. Quest of the Platinum Waffle. Yeah, I watched that film and I was like, I'm going to make my own Indiana Jones film. So I think I have one. It's called Quest for the Crystal Block or something. I can't remember exactly.
Funny enough, I was actually just when we do these showcases, I like to watch through the films, as we talk about them. Yeah. And as we were doing that, you started talking about it. I was like, I realised I was watching your film instead of Indiana Jones.
There's just so many Indiana Jones brick films. You could be watching any of them,
Yeah, that's true. When those Crystal Skull sets came out.
My one, I'm just gonna say now, my one is definitely not as good as the quest for the Platinum Waffle.
I have actually got a funny story. I don't think I've ever shared this before. When it comes to like when I very, very first started watching Brickfilms, because I talk about when I first watched Brickfilms. Really, I'm talking like 2014, 2015, when I was just about starting.
Yeah.
But I did actually start watching. I think the first time I properly encountered Brickfilms was probably around 2010, maybe 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And I was like looking on on the internet, and I remember being really obsessed with Raiders of the Lost Brick, the like CGI Lego video that they did, and I remember I was always trying to find those kind of videos that were like similar quality to the cutscenes in the video game, and I see like loads of like recommended. I'd see like all these like other films, and I remember being so really put off by the low quality of the videos, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't want to watch any of these like stop motion things that people have made, and that put me off watching Brickfilms for a good like a few years.
Yeah, the like Sean was saying, there was a lot of Indiana Jones Lego films that were made in that 2008 wave. But yeah, I think Platinum Waffle definitely stands out amongst them, and also I think amongst all Brick films, especially for that musical action sequence.
I still feel like it's one that I hear people talk about
Yeah,
today.
people still talk about it.
Yeah, I know. Because for the showcase, I think we're trying to promote films that might not be so well known, and this definitely probably doesn't fit into that.
Well, we say that people still bring it up, but in the grand scheme of things, if you're talking about newer brick filmers, you'd be very surprised when they don't know an older brick film that you think everyone should know. Even earlier when I was saying, oh yeah, everybody knows the beer song, suddenly I was thinking to myself, I bet if I linked the beer song in the BIM Discord now and asked the newer members if they know it, they'd have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right, okay, yeah. So that's interesting. So there's... I think Lego brick film is getting to the point where there's now generations of brick filmers. Yeah, that's something to think about. Yeah, because like I think Platinum Waffle has like around 1 million views, but that million could have been a wave that happened, a decade ago. Who knows? Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anyway, everyone should go watch the Platinum Waffle. Don't expect good resolution, but do expect a very entertaining brick film.
And there's some other e-animation brick films from back then that would be less well known that are worth checking out. Like Spilled Milk is a really good one. Again, especially for the animation.
I've definitely seen that, but I have not seen it in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to rewatch that.
Oh yeah, I did actually want to briefly mention about the quest of Time and Waffles. One of the gags I really liked was the when you have the boulders coming over, and you think the gag is, oh yeah, it's small, and then just as that happens, it comes over, on the side and knocks someone over.
This is what I mean.
Really
it's
funny.
Moments like that. It's just the timing, the comedic timing is just perfect,
Yeah.
and like the fact that it's like a double bluff is just perfect.
Yeah, it does feel like more genuinely well-constructed comedy than a lot of other Rick films.
Yeah. And it's like when they're walking into that, it's like, what kind of place is this? And there's like just a gift shop just like randomly inside the tomb.
But I almost forgot, you made the Kraken brick film, and in more recent years, e-animation has actually returned to making brick films, and most notably in 2019 made a film called Lego Kraken Attack that has a really impressive Kraken scene.
Yeah, I've seen that, and that's great. And I don't think he used Lego for the Kraken, right? He used some other kind of model.
Mm-hmm. I think it's modeling clay, yeah.
Yeah, it's very modeling clay. Wow, so it's very stylized like that film, and yeah, the quality of production I think is really high. Yeah, great film.
Maybe he should be a future guest.
For sure.
Oh, I would look forward to that episode if you had him on for sure. Yeah. Yeah, funny you mentioned the Kraken video, because we've not mentioned the Kraken video, but actually it is my most... I think now it is my most watched video.
Yeah, actually, when I was talking about how your new video had like 700,000 views, and to most of us that's like we'll never see a video with 700,000 views. But I was just thinking to myself, I was like, oh yeah, that's so great, isn't it? You're still getting a video with 700,000. Then I was thinking, oh wait, he had a video with 44 million, so that's like that's probably nothing to him.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like when I made the Kraken film, it was very interesting because I just made the bank robbery film the year before, and that was doing very well. And I think also my pirate film that I made for the Police Chase trilogy was doing very well. And I came up with the idea for the Kraken video the summer of 2015, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, this will go viral. I was very confident that this idea of doing like a Kraken attacking Lego would go viral. And lo and behold, I was correct. I'm not correct in most things, but this time I was correct. But I could have never imagined it being as successful as it has been. And believe it or not, even today, 6 or 7 years after I made it, maybe 6.5 years, it's still my most watched video per day, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's that video has been an absolute blessing to the channel, to be honest. And
that's another thing as well. Like, I mean, we mentioned this briefly before, but like, a lot of Brick films have the opportunity, you have the chance to be like real like evergreen content. I think that is the the timelessness of them, and I definitely feel that with your films, like like you can very easily just go through, watch through. I think especially like from like the Lego London Bank Robbery onwards, and like they haven't like I don't feel like they've aged significantly. I think in terms of quality and like your the way you've enhanced your like animation and all that kind of stuff, but like they're still like really really enjoyable films that haven't really aged.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I think you're right. And it's something that you can't necessarily predict when you're making a Brick film, but like the Kraken film, like you say, it's an evergreen film. I don't know, that's the term that you used. It seems to always captivate people, and I think every time it comes up in people's recommended videos, they just want to rewatch it. And because I think actually like the Kraken, I mean, it had pretty terrible lighting. There were issues with the way it was made. I filmed it in 2 months, which is like a record time for my more recent films. And it only took about a month to edit. But yeah, it all just sort of came together. I think the actual content was very exciting and dramatic. And I think that's the reason I think people are coming back to rewatch it, is because of that feeling you get from the narrative. Yeah. I wanted to mention, actually, this is a really bizarre inspiration. So a lot of people point out that film was probably inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean 2, which has a Kraken monster attack, and that is absolutely true. Yes, it was. Very heavily so, in fact. But what was actually this is a really bizarre like inspiration. What actually made me decide to like go all out with like a monster attack and make it kind of everyone's trying to fight for their lives, was I watched a YouTube video called I think it's just like something to do with a ball pit. It's like, have you ever heard of Rocket Jump? Like Freddie Wong and Rocket Jump? Yeah. YouTuber. Yeah. So he made a video that was meant to be like this ball pit video in their workplace, where they bring all these like, like kids play, play area, like ball pit kind of balls. They just had them all in the office. And then the film was meant to start out like, oh yeah, we're just having a bit of fun. And then it dissolves into it, like, degrades into this terrible situation where this ball pit monster appears and starts like eating people. And everyone's like fighting for their lives. And I remember I watched that film while I was studying at university, like 2014, 2015. I was just like, okay, my next film is going to be a monster film because this is absolutely brilliant. And then later I had the idea to make it the Kraken from Pirates of the Caribbean 2. So yeah, that's just like a little fact about where I got the inspiration from. That it's just this random YouTube video that's really well made that I definitely recommend watching. I can't remember the exact title of that video, but if you basically type in rocket jump and ball pit, it will come up.
I'm sure we'll find it for the edit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to say about we've been talking about the timelessness of stop motion. I think a large part of the appeal of a video like this, you know, why it's so universal with so many views and stuff, is that it's so tactile in that like the water is a sheet and you can tell it's a sheet, but you like that. It's very charming, you know. I feel like it wouldn't have the same charm if you just had a bunch of CG water.
Yeah, I totally agree, Sean. And you know, I have had people, usually, if I'm being honest, usually older people, to ask me like, you know, why do you do stop motion? Why don't you do CGI? You know, isn't that like easier and or quicker, less time consuming? And there probably is definitely some truth to that. But it's the aesthetic of stop motion is unparalleled. And like you say, yeah, so the sea will be made out of a nice cloth. And it's like, it doesn't even really matter what you use. So as long as it looks nice on a camera, it just adds to the visual.
Yeah, but I think the viewer just likes the feeling of that it's made with things that, you know, they could make it in their own house.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think actually that's the appeal of brick films to a lot of people, is the accessibility of it. It's like, it's something that they're very familiar with.
Yeah.
And, you know, people can watch a brick film, and not only do they think, wow, like, you know, they understand what it is and what's going on, they can see sometimes like the actual technique that was used to make it. And what's great is when someone who has never had any experience in stop motion watches a Lego animation, and they can actually figure out in their minds like how it's being made.
How it's made, yeah.
Yeah, and it blows their minds, because of course stop motion is an amazing, mind-blowing thing. And, you know, I think that's part of the appeal, because so recently I watched a film by, you've probably heard of them, Leica Studios. They're based in America.
Yeah.
And, you know, I watched Missing Link, and, you know, I was absolutely, because I went into the film knowing it was stop motion, and I was absolutely blown away by just the incredible technique and like stop motion mastery that those guys have. And, you know, pretty much unparalleled in terms of technique, I think, in the world. Incredibly smooth animation. But the issue with that, of course, is that you show that to someone who, you know, doesn't know what stop motion is or whatever, and you don't. It's like they probably would think it's CGI because it's so
it looks
good.
like CG.
Yeah.
I was waiting.
I knew where you were
for-
going with that, because I feel the exact same way. Yeah, Missing Link is absolutely incredible on a technical level, but I think they went too far. I think it just looks like CG, and it loses that stop motion.
You know, if anyone from Leica's listening to this podcast, please let me be clear. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely incredible and unparalleled, and, you know, everyone has their own artistic vision, and, you know, they might want to achieve a different aesthetic to what I want to achieve. But yeah, I agree with you, Sean. I just think when you're making a stop motion, you want people to realize it's a stop motion. You want it to have that stop motion feel.
When you were saying about like that with Missing Link, I was waiting for that but.
Same
and I feel like a lot of people do feel that, and I think it's something that I've noticed. I think as with the Leica films in general, like as they've gone like each one, you think of something like, I don't know, like Coraline. I really feel like you feel the stop motion.
Yeah, Coraline's great.
Yeah,
I love how it looks.
And also Paranorman as well. I mean, I love both of those films so much. I think like as they kind of went on though, like they become more and more, I guess, impressive on a technical level, but they feel less and less, I guess in a way, less and less relatable in that sense, because you don't really feel that same kind of thing of like, oh yeah, I can feel that it's stop motion.
Yeah, I mean, Missing Link just gives me this nagging feeling of, if you wanted it to look like CG, why didn't you make it in CG?
Yeah,
I'd rather it look like stop motion.
I mean, I would never say this to anyone who works in person, because obviously you have to recognize the time that's gone into it. But it's like, yeah, you know, if from a creative point of view, I just think that they went like too far with it. You may as well have made it from CG.
It does remind me of the whole thing with like not obviously not quite the same, because I mean at least it does in a visual level it's very nice, but like it does remind me a bit of like the whole motion capture thing, and when they were trying to like in the 2000s when they were trying to kind of make CGI as realistic as possible, and it gets to the point of like you're doing things like with humans and stuff, and like why don't you just have humans?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, you know, stop motion is always an impressive technique to use because of the amount of dedication that's involved. But I think, like with any technique for film, you really want to try and push what is unique about that technique to make, well, you want to take the positives of that technique and like push that. Not try and hide that. So yeah, I think when you're doing a stop motion, you know, you don't need to try and, you want to try and simulate some degree of realism to it, of course, but you can like push it too far. There's like a trade-off in my view.
I think there is like a certain point, like there's a, and again, I'm not against anyone who does put in, you know, a lot of effort when it comes to like, I don't know, talking about Brickfilm specifically, with doing like CG stuff, especially if the graphics are good and they blend in well with the, you know, the backgrounds or whatever. But I do think that there is a sense of like the, you know, over like 7+ years now of being like brick filming, one thing I've noticed is like over time I've tried to like improve everything from like, you know, animation, set design, cinematography, like pretty much every element with it, but I haven't really kind of gone beyond that in terms of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work on After Effects or anything like that. I've never really even touched it. But I think that what I've kind of come from that is like, well, I just want to do as much as I possibly can in camera and be like practical as possible. And I actually grown to really like that style. And I think there was a certain point where like, I don't know, maybe it's something like someone's watching a TV or something and, you know, have like a graphic for that, whatever. But like, as much as I possibly can, I like to blend. I like to have like practical effects, whether it's like explosions or, you know, like water or, you know, and that's something that I noticed as well, that with your films. I was looking at like your like
Great Getaway.
The Kraken, and the Kraken film as well, like all the effects and stuff in that, and it becomes a really nice like look. I think that something that I guess a lot of stop motion animators may take for granted is that seeing how something is made can actually be really cool, because you're the whole time, because if you're not under no illusion that it's not, you know, that it's stop motion, it's like you're kind of like, oh, that's so cool, I didn't realize you could do that with this element. I think it's one of the cool things about Lego in general, like when you look at like mocks and things like that, and like the big builds people make, is like, oh, I didn't realize you could use that piece for this. And I think it's the same with brick filming. It's like, I didn't realize you could do that effect. So I think it's just a really cool thing in general to try and add that kind of practical effects and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with what you're saying, Will. I think I'm exactly the same. So I try and do everything, or at least as much as I can, just with the camera work and on camera. Like when guns go off or cannons go off, you know, I'll use like a laser pointer or something to get like a light effect. Or, you know, I just try and keep it all within the stop motion. There are times I do masking to like make things fly around and stuff, but I try and avoid it wherever possible. So yeah, I guess it's like a creative philosophy thing. I think, you know, I'm definitely somebody who likes to avoid as much CGI or editing work as I can.
I do think something that I always sort of say is kind of like a funny thing. It's like with the way that like some brick films I've seen, and like it's never really changed. Like the whole time I've been doing brick film, I feel like you can go back to like the 2000s to like to present day. There's always going to be some brick films where you have like 1,000 layers on Premiere and After Effects, and then there's like a single JPEG floating on a background. And I think that for a lot of people, I think maybe some people just don't like realize how much you can do practically, and how like it can end up being so much better in the end.
But yeah, I feel like it's kind of undervalued. If people might the concept that the audience actually likes to see how something was made, and I feel like that's why the Lego Kraken managed to hit really big. As part of it, is what I mean.
Yeah, the Lego Kraken is definitely rough around the edges, I would say. I mean, I recorded it in my old studio, which is in my parents' house's attic. So when I came home for the summer, I'd spend just like days on end in the attic. Of course, I did enjoy my summer holidays with my friends who also lived in my hometown as well. I'd like to point that out. But for the most part of the day, I would be spending in the attic. It would be absolutely boiling in there as well. So I had to have the windows open.
I can imagine, yeah.
And like, as anyone will tell you when you're getting into stop motion, and certainly a lot of people in the YouTube comments repeatedly told me, you should never have natural lighting when doing stop motion. But, I decided I would sacrifice the lighting of my film for my own personal comfort. I mean, to be fair, it probably was worthwhile because I'm not sure I would have finished. I probably would have died from heat stroke if I hadn't. So, anyway, the point is the Kraken film was rough around the edges. There are definitely flaws in the technique. But, somehow it's, it definitely has that stop motion charm. And people can kind of watch it and be like, wow, this is what someone made with his Lego collection. Just for fun, and you can understand the kind of work that went into it, and that's probably part of the appeal for sure.
And of course, I have a similar philosophy where I want to try to do as many things in camera as possible, but I am willing to acknowledge that I quite like that philosophy specifically because I'm too lazy to learn Blender.
Yeah, same. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, because
that's
as long
fair.
as
That's
I have
fair.
nothing. I like good uses of incorporating digital work, especially the stuff Sanjira has been doing. It's combining stop motion and stuff done in Blender is incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, that certainly that's one reason why I really like the whole in-camera practical effects thing is because I just don't want to have to learn a new program.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. Yeah, I think actually, like, even when I'm animating, I'm thinking like, oh, for goodness sake, I need to like make this object fly. That means I'm gonna have to do like masking later, and it's just like I try and avoid that wherever possible. Just to lower the amount of workload for later.
Yeah, actually, that's something I do as well. I try to hide the supports in camera, and not even out of like, oh, it's so authentic. Even the supports are hidden in camera, but just because I don't want to have to edit it out later.
Absolutely. But what's funny about that is when you come up with some like crazy like blue tacks like weird Lego structure to like hold one thing in like the perfect place, just so you can like have the structure hidden behind. It's like
I think that I feel like we kind of made it kind of clear, like already. But something I wanted to kind of just like stress, and I guess in a way, is that like I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with like using CGI and stuff in Brickfilms, because there are like they said I feel like really in the end of the day there's no like right or wrong way to make a brick film, but I think it's a matter of like
artistry.
I think you need to be passionate about and really put like a real effort in whatever like direction you go with it, and I feel like it needs to kind of fit the style that you're kind of going for as well.
I mean, it's like you were saying about sometimes you see the brick films with just a floating PNG of a ship going around, and it's not cohesive with the it doesn't gel with the stop motion and the other shots, whereas like somebody like again Sanjira, everything he does, it's all cohesive in one shot. It all clicks together because he's just putting the effort into it's really just a matter of experience, and like over time you learn. It's like when you're new and you first discover how to put like a TV screen in your brick film digitally, and you put it on there and it's just flat, and you don't change the colors, you don't change the transparency, the contrast or anything. You just think, wow, it's a screen, amazing. But like over time you learn there's so much more you can do to make it actually gel into the shot.
Yeah,
I do want to give a brief shout out to one film that like is a rare exception for the single PNG floating kind of thing. Orcs in Space by Dufour, which came out was actually an entry in Manifest, I absolutely love that film. It didn't actually place, but it was still a film that I really loved because it's hard to kind of explain, but somehow
Well, that was like super intentional.
Yeah, like it really like the style. There was a real style to it, and I really enjoyed that one.
I'll have to watch that. Yeah,
I really like Dafoe Saw in general. Actually, his stuff is really good.
Yeah. It's hard to explain why that works.
I think it goes back to what you were saying before, Sean, that it's like basically you can do any technique you want so long as that technique like realizes a certain aesthetic or like a creative vision that you have.
Yeah, creative vision for
so
sure.
It's like you can try and achieve something and you can fall short because your technique's not good enough, and that could look not so great. But like if you've got like a sort of creative direction in mind, like people can agree or disagree whether they like that or not, but ultimately it's like you've achieved an aesthetic, and if everything falls into that same aesthetic, then it's worked.
Well, I think it needs to be. Yeah, it needs to be intentional, because I think when it comes to, I don't know, like rules or whatever, when it comes to filmmaking, in many ways they are sort of there to be for some, if you're creative, to be kind of broken. But you need to be, if you're going to break those walls, you need to, or like do something that is kind of like not seen as conventionally kind of the way that you'd want to do something. It needs to be done in a way which is aware of the walls and is like intentionally doing that, if that makes sense. You need to kind of understand those walls to some degree. And I think it is kind of like that.
Yeah, it is like that. It's like going back to these people we've been talking about, like Leica Studios, even like the kiddie Lego videos we were talking about. It's like all of these people and projects go for a certain aesthetic, which, like, although I may not necessarily like appreciate as much as other aesthetics, it's like they've still achieved that aesthetic that they were setting out to do. And for the people, and many people enjoy that. So it's like like anyone who directs anything, you make a creative decision, and you either succeed in achieving that or you don't.
Absolutely.
But we often get to a point in these podcasts where we have to start saying, it feels like we could keep on talking for hours, but we should probably wrap things up here.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's getting to a point, isn't it?
I'm sure. To be honest, it's just nice to have an opportunity to talk about brick films. Because it's true, I've got a lot of friends and family as well who love talking about movies just generally. And I do enjoy that as well. But like brick films specifically, it's a very like niche, a little pocket of cinema. And I've really enjoyed just being able to have a thorough chat about that topic. So
it is unique to have this platform where we can get to have really in-depth conversations, get so specific talking about brick filming.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for doing what you're doing. This is it's been a lot of fun being part of this podcast.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really great to meet you both, and I look forward to listening to the next episodes of this podcast. It's been really fun. So see ya.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.